My name is William Douglas McClintock, and I am from Illinois, a city 30 miles north of St. Louis. During World War II, I was in school, in high school, when the war started. And when my 18th birthday came, I had to sign up for the draft. And when the school year ended in May, I went into the service. I went up to Chicago, Illinois, to Camp Grant. And at Camp Grant, I went through the physicals, and they also had other programs there which you could enlist into, such as aircraft, the pilot's course, which I took the mental test and passed, and when I came to the physical test, I flunked out because I was colorblind. And then a town down in Alabama, where I went into the artillery, and that was the 105 millimeter artillery of the 101st Artillery Division. There I went into the Tennessee maneuvers, which was already in progress when I went into the military. So as you finished your courses, they shipped you off into those assumed combat situations. And when finishing there, they shipped me out to Kansas, to, what was the name of that fort? Anyhow, I wasn't there but about a month, and then they shipped me back down to Alabama because I joined the parachute division, and I went to the parachute school. Finished my in the parachute school, and then they had another school there that was a special forces school that I enrolled in, and this was after I completed my 5 jumps. From there, we went into this part of Fort Benning in Georgia that was this special forces, which was essentially the attack on the China coastline and to set up weather and meteorological stations for invasion into China, where the Japanese were fighting. This, however, did not come about because they did ship me out. They busted this up and they shipped me out to New Jersey, where I was at Fort Meade, Maryland, and to be shipped over to Europe. And I was unassigned to a division, and while at Fort Meade, the 17th Airborne came in from down at Fort Benning, where they had been assembled, and were shipped up there to finish collecting other parachute soldiers to finish their complement. I was at Fort Meade for 3 months, and in that time I had made 2 more jumps. One was I weighed 204 pounds, and I went out of the plane weighing 408 pounds. I had a lot of live ammunition and mines and all that on me. From there, I went to the New York harbor, where I was to embark on a ship going over to Europe. Any questions?
Okay, well, I'm gonna ask the question with the camera not rolling. Well, you enrolled because of the draft. Is that why you got?
I was in the war because of the draft, right?
Okay, so it wasn't like a voluntary choice.
Well, I volunteered to go into the draft anyway.
It's like if that's volunteering.
Yes, I was volunteering before the actual, it was a draft, but my name was not called. I volunteered first.
Okay. What did you and your friends think of the war, like, prior to your involvement in it? Like, whenever you were registering for the draft and stuff?
Most of the kids that was in school with me were ready to go and serve the country. Yes.
That's kind of cool. Okay. So where do we go from here? I'm trying to think. I'm like going through my little list of questions in my head. I should have brought my sheet. Okay, so what was combat like in Europe, if you want to talk about that?
Well, you want to know how I got over there or what?
Yeah, how you got over there?
Just
what you did once you get
yeah.
What is it? Well, you asked how I got over there. Well, in New York, we were assembled on the wharf. And on one side was the Queen Mary. On the other side was the French ship Normandy. And of course the Queen Mary was the bigger of the 2 ships. But we thought we was going to go on the Queen Mary, and by the time we got going around and around, going up into the area for loading onto the ship, we didn't know if we was going to the Queen or to Normandy. And it just so happened I went on to Normandy. And both ships went over unescorted because they had they could go fast enough that submarines or surface vessels outside of a destroyer couldn't touch them. They could outrun them. And when we left New York Harbor, it was nice weather. Got out in about mid-Atlantic, and there was a submarine alert. And the Normandy turned north, and the next day it was cold. We were up in the near the Arctic Circle, and we finally ended up coming down through Glasgow Bay into Glasgow, Scotland. And we got off there in Glasgow, and we had a couple hours of waiting around for the train to take us down south to England. And that was nice country and everything. We're coming down the bay there. It looked really beautiful, really, all the greenery. And there was barges there along the shore. And while we was in Glasgow, we asked how come there were so many barges along the shoreline there? And they said those were whiskey barges. That's how they aged Scotch. And the barges were set up in 3, 5, 7, 9, 12 barges. And those were the years of rolling in the ocean there to keep the whiskey rotating in the cask.
Did you drink a lot of that whiskey, Grandpa?
Yes, I did. Anyhow, from there we went down to Titsworth, England. And this was the first camp that I came to in Europe. And when I went over to the latrine area, who did I run into first? Was a school buddy. And I had to go over, well, that was about 8,000 miles to see an old buddy I went to school with. And he was on latrine duty. And the second one I seen over there was one that went to school with my brother, and I knew him real well too. And he also was on latrine duty. And they both were in the 17th Airborne. They were parachute jumpers also. Now that was an oddity. But I'd run into a lot of people over there that I knew from hometown. We stayed there at Titsworth. This was during the travel going across the sea, was the time of the invasion at Normandy. So I missed out on the invasion. And my time there in Titsworth was more about a month or more after the invasion, which was the ground forces were coming into Belgium and the winter months. And when we were assembled at the airfield to board the planes, the weather situation was such that a winter storm had started. And the bulge had already broken out and was in full winter storm.
Yeah.
A lot of snow. And we went across. We could not fly, so we went across in LSTs and other landing ships, and we landed at Le Havre, France. And they put us on trucks, and we drove up to the bulge in trucks. So my first battle of the war was from a truck ride in which we was heading toward the west part of the bulge, coming up to join Patton's army there. And we were stopped by an artillery barrage, and everybody got out and was laying in the ditch there. And these trucks were being destroyed right one after the other from artillery. And I laid in the snow there for about 6 hours, and it was cold. When nighttime came, where we could get up and move out, they did so. And there was not as many trucks, so we had to double up in other trucks, which really was crowded. We got up there to another spot, and it was at Liège, Belgium, which was about 8 miles from Bastogne. And everybody was really lost, and there was no what do you call it? The commands were handed down from sergeants and corporals and all that, but there was no real order in military action because it was so disorganized. And we pulled into this one spot there. God, that's been a long time ago. Yeah. This Liège was hit by artillery. There was very few buildings that hadn't been hit. And there was some German soldiers in that town that were snipers that were picking off some of us. And they went door to door and threw grenades and led into the buildings to rout the snipers. Anyway, that I was up there on the line for a little over 10 days. And one day they sent me out to guard over a railroad overpass, and I was walking the top of it, and there was a couple of GIs come down the road. You could tell it was snowing, but you could tell they were GIs. And I halted them, and they found out that they were wiremen for forward firing officer of the 105.5 artillery, 105 millimeter guns. They called them long toms. And he was only down the road about 500 yards. And they asked me what I was doing out there, and I was telling them that I was making sure that there wouldn't be no damage to this overhead, because they'd probably use it. And they said, boy, you're out here in no man's land. So I got down from there, and I was, as the buttresses came in for the bridge, they made a corner. I stayed in the corner of that, and it was cold. It was real cold. And here come a German down the road, and I knew he was a German.
Mhm.
And I had gun, I had knife, I had hand grenades, and I didn't do a thing until he was within about 3 feet of me, and I jumped out and grabbed him around the neck and started to shake him. And then something in me snapped, and I ran up the railroad fill, and I thought my heart was beating so fast that I thought I was going to blow my helmet off. And I laid down in the snow there, and I was not shot at. And I figured that he was as scared as I was.
Mhm.
And he probably run the other way and was laying in the snow like me,
Mhm.
doing the same thing. Anyway, to make a long story short, when morning finally came, I laid in that snow for a long time. And when it got a little dusk started to come in, I started moseying back toward the road area, and an officer and corporal came by and picked me up. And as we was going down the road, it deflated in the ground, got deeper. When we got down to the turn, I imagine the only part of us that was above the ground was our bodies. And it was a Tiger tank over in the woods, about less than 300, 400 feet, that cut off a round, and it broke off on the far bank. And we drove like crazy after that, through that snow, and we got back to where the rest of the fellows were in the forest there. And they had a barn there, and that's where I went in, and we was in there, and come to find out my gun was frozen. The mechanism on the gun was frozen. The moisture, I guess, laying in the snow and that froze the gun up. And I was trying to get it undone by pulling back on the breech, and the gun went off. And one hit this knee and went through my foot,
Oof.
and they sent me back to the Red Cross there, which was about 1.5 miles back. And then they sent me from there to a hospital in Belgium there, near Le Havre. And then from there I went over to England. And over in England they were cutting off legs pretty fast from frostbite. And my legs were black, almost halfway up my chin. And I thought I was going to lose mine. And they came by and stuck you with a pin and see if you had any feeling. I could not feel it, but I said I thought I felt it.
Like, no, don't take off.
And so I ended up, I didn't have my legs cut off. But when that skin started to, new skin started to grow underneath the old, it started peeling, you know. And boy, it was like leather coming off. And so I kept my legs.
It was a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. That is a good thing. Yeah.
And the war was still going on. They was through the bulge when I got out of the hospital,
Mhm.
and they were into Germany. And I was over in London, and that's when they were sending over these V2 rockets, and they was bombing London with them. And that's where I got my ribs broke. Because in the park there in London, they had slit trenches for air raids, you know. And I was running along, I was walking along there, and I knew where there was a slit trench. And this was in the nighttime there, and they sent over some of these V2s, and of course all the lights go out. And I knew where the trench was, so I turned around and I started running for it.
Yeah.
And I got there too quick. And I stepped into the trench, and my body went across the top there. And I fell right on it, and that busted 3 ribs. So I was all taped up for the ribs then.
You're just beating yourself up, Grandpa.
Well, that lasted until, the war finally got over, and I was shipped back over into Germany, and I was a guard over there, and where they held the big conferences with Zukov and Patton and Eisenhower and all the rest of those generals after the war. And I was as close to Zukov as I am to you.
Really?
And Patton. And I was guarding that place. But I also was doing a lot of drinking at that time too.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
Okay, some like general type questions. Did you have any like names or any kind of feelings towards the Germans? Like, did y'all have any nicknames for them, or?
No, after the war, I even had a few German but you call them buddies that were about my age, that I palled around with. Yeah.
What about during the war?
During the war, no. During the war, but after the war, why, it was all over. They were just another people.
Yeah. Trying to think of some questions. Brain fry. There's like so many like simple questions. I was rolling them off to you earlier, Mom.
Of course, my records during service was lost in me being shipped around to various areas, and I had no ID package, as you'd call it.
ID package?
Yeah, that's where your service records and all that. And so I was really without, I was a soldier without any commands. I was just laying around.
You're just kind of there.
And I had a 7-day furlough to go to Switzerland. And it turned into 37 days.
Mhm.
And I thought I would be put into the guardhouse when I got back, but they thought they had shipped me home. My records had got there, caught up to where I was supposed to be,
Mhm.
and they had thought that I was shipped home. So, but I didn't get any guard time or anything on that.
You just had a nice long vacation.
I went to where my grandfather was born on in Frankfurt on Main,
Oh, wow.
and that was Grandpa Wagner,
Uh-huh.
and because he came over when he was a small boy,
Mhm.
and I thought maybe I could find some relatives, but
Yeah.
and none of the Wagners that I run across were any
In
relation.
Yeah.
I did spend a week in Switzerland,
Mhm.
and I was at the Jungfrau Mountain,
Mhm.
and then I went down to southern France, and up to Paris, and then finally back to Berlin,
Mhm.
and that's where they shipped me back from Berlin to New York,
Yeah.
and I disembarked in New York
Mhm.
and went up to Boston. I had a girlfriend up there,
Mhm.
and I looked her up, and then I went home.
Yeah. What were your feelings in the war, like, after experiencing it?
Hmm?
What were your feelings on the war after, like, experiencing it and going through it?
After the war, I did very little for a while. I went to work in construction,
Mhm.
and then I thought, well, I take advantage of the GI Bill, and I went to Northrop Institute
Mhm.
out in California. That's Aeronautical Institute,
Mhm.
and I was studying aeronautical engineering,
Mhm.
and my money ran out, and I had to go back home,
Mhm.
and I went into construction, and I was a carpenter, and the money was good, much better than what going to school, and that was a bad mistake. That's why I keep telling Josie that he needs that diploma.
Yeah. So what did you think of the war?
Hmm?
Like, I said, what did you think of the war? Did you think it was, like, I'm trying to,
Just and
yeah.
Yes,
meaningful.
because I thought the war was just, yes, and
Mhm.
we were fighting for a purpose, and we were fighting for democracy
Mhm.
over totalitarianism,
Yeah.
which was both what Japan and Italy and Germany had. They
Mhm.
had dictators, where we had freedom.
Yeah.
We elected ours.
Yep. I'm like,
Do you think that most of the guys that you fought with felt the same way?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, they all thought that it was a just cause, and we were in the right. We figured that they were in the wrong.
Okay, I'm ready.